Hi guys, just before we start the episode today, whatever platform you are listening to this on, whether it be on the podcast, Apple Podcast, YouTube, whatever it is, please support it. Please like, subscribe, whatever you can do. We want to reach as many people as possible. So please do that and we'll get right into the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback Podcast. Today, I'm really happy and excited to have on the show Dr. Cathleen King. First of all, just before we get into the show, I don't think I've ever had this many issues like actually properly recording a podcast, and it's all been my fault. We have tried to organize it a number of times. I've had to pull out a number of times, and then we finally got it sorted 2 days ago, and 10 minutes into the podcast, Bali just cut in and the power just went, and I didn't have power the whole day. So we're expecting no typhoons, nothing like that to affect the episode today. Thank you so much for bearing with me on this. But just before we get into it, I just wanted to give you guys a bit of an introduction into Cathleen's story. So she actually suffered for over 2 decades with debilitating chronic infections and sensitivities such as Lyme, mold, chronic fatigue, and much, much more. She was able to fully recover using the principles of brain retraining that she uses today in her program, Primal Trust, where she helps countless others regain their health. And I've actually heard from a number of people in my DMs who told me about Dr. Cathleen, and then she actually reached out to me. So it was a great timing. She's got the rare combination of in-depth doctoral-level education and training with over 20 years coaching others in the health and healing world, and has been through her own journey, spending, as I said, 2 decades of her life navigating through deep, debilitating illnesses. And so I'm really happy and excited to have her on the show. And she's agreed to do more of a story about her recovery today, and then to come back on at another date to actually talk a little bit more about brain retraining and her program. So I'll stop talking now. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here. This is obviously one of my favorite topics, so glad to join you.
No worries. Cool. Well, if we could go back to before, what life was like for you before you got sick. Were you always someone who had something going on, or were you like pretty much a healthy person? What was life like before then?
Yeah, before I had my crash, I would have said that I had overcame all the odds. I was living my purpose. I had graduated with a doctoral degree from physical therapy school. I was traveling. I was that go-getter, type A, super athlete, super student, Miss Conquer the World, with a deep secret. And the deep secret was my childhood was insane, chaotic. And I thought I had escaped all of the statistics that would have been against me. If you've heard of the childhood ACEs study, that is a predictor in chronic illness. Have you heard about that?
I know.
Are you familiar with that? So this is something to look into for people who have chronic illness. There's a study called the childhood ACEs study that's a predictor if later on in life you end up with a chronic illness. And it's a series of 10 questions based on your childhood. And my ACEs score was a 9 out of 10, which means you're going to be sick. And I remember thinking oh, I have escaped the odds here. I'm doing great. It was put out by Kaiser Permanente. So look it up. It's actually really interesting. Point is that I had that childhood that was chaotic. I had developed a strategy of success, if you will, as a child that I utilized, and I thought it was working great until one day it didn't. And I crashed all at once about age 25, traveling in South America after I graduated PT school.
Wow. And when that happened then in South America, what was it specifically? Was it, did you just get a bug or something like that? And
yeah, is the perfect storm. So usually a crash happens, the big crash happens because there's something that's affecting our sense of safety. Often there is maybe relationship and stress dynamic, and maybe you get some type of exposure, whether it's toxin or bug, all at the same time. That's usually the perfect storm. That was mine. It was in South America. intense situation with the person I was traveling with, got bugs, and then had a couple of like, I'd call almost like near-death experiences, really traumatic things that happened, landed me in a hospital. I ended up alone. And that really put my nervous system back into some of the same mirroring of my childhood, where I was alone, I wasn't doing well, and I felt out of control. I was in a foreign speaking place. And I think that was the perfect setup for just a major crack through my psyche, through my energy field. And I was never the same. I, recovered a little bit. I worked for several years. It didn't feel great, but I could do it. But I was never, ever the same.
And I guess, and it's similar to, well, for me, when I look back at my story, I attributed, because it all started when I had a tick bite. And so I was like, oh, well, it all started with that. That was the beginning of it. And now I realize it would have started like far, sooner, earlier than that. And that actually, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. When you look, initially it all happened, did you attribute it all to South America? And you were like, it's just everything that's happened in South. Oh, you did.
Yeah, I was like, it's the parasites from South America. I got parasites, and for some weird reason, I'm not recovering, even though everyone else, I did all the treatments, and the person I traveled with recovered just fine. And it's like, it must just be a really bad bug.
And so what were your symptoms? You mentioned you were in hospital.
Yeah.
Like symptoms.
So my initial symptoms of crash would have been dysautonomia, POTS, dizziness, severe gut stuff, infection. So I looked like, dysautonomia and infection and digestive issues. I didn't know anything about Lyme disease at the time, or mold toxicity, or even chronic trauma, really. So I thought that I just had, gut issues that were kind of causing me to feel a little crazy.
Okay. And you managed, how long were you in hospital for?
A couple of weeks. And then I was eventually taken back to the States, and I was pretty sick for, a couple of months, really sick. And then I slowly got back into work, but I was never the same. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't eat all these different things. And, but I worked for several years, just kind of weakened, if you will.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because I think the problem is when you've got that kind of personality, you don't want your life, your external life to suffer because of what you've got going on. You still want to progress, you still want to achieve. And so to the detriment of your health, you still push on at like a 40%, which sounds like that's what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, then there tends to be some type of crash that takes you down another notch and another. And I really had kind of three perfect storms that eventually caused me to be debilitated and mostly just in bed all day for years.
And what was, so mentally at that time, what was that like going through that? What impact did it have on the relationships you had in your life at that time?
Yeah. Well, for being somebody whose entire survival was about accomplishment, achievement, to have that taken away, and being bedbound, I was a mom, a stay-home mom of 2 kids, full-time care, felt like I was contributing nothing to the world, including to my kids. Self-hate, that's what that time was. Self-loathing, absolute failure, because everything that I did to be okay, my survival mechanisms, I couldn't do. And I had to sit with me and somehow learn to find some sense of self-respect when I wasn't doing anything that I felt respecting of, so that's what that period was like.
And so you said you had 3 perfect storms, which some people are unlucky enough to have 1 perfect storm. You had 3 of them. Could you talk us through what happened there?
Yeah, I was clearly meant to break down. It's
Sorry,
my path. It was my path to go through it all. So, first one was South America. 5-6 years later, ending of one relationship, beginning of another that was really out of my alignment. A lot of ways I was out of my alignment sexually, emotionally, codependent, going against myself. And that's when I would say that a lot of the Lyme symptoms and Epstein-Barr symptoms came on. that I just couldn't recover. I ended up not being able to work. I got out of that relationship, and then I started doing a little better. Like, okay, you get into alignment. And then I decided to get married, and I entered into a fundamentalist religion because I was really trying to heal my childhood wounding by having a safe, nice community, and, to heal a lot of those things. I met a great man. He's wonderful. We're not married anymore, but he was wonderful. But I got married, and again, went out of my alignment. I got involved in a whole religion and a way of life that wasn't me, but it was trying to heal parts of me that were always missing: family, culture, community, a safe, stable man. And I stayed home as a mom. So I quit my career, and and then I had my first child, and that was the third straw, meaning I had entered into absolute inauthenticity, put my body through, childbirth, and, was living a life that was out of alignment with me. And and that's when things just went really south for me.
When you say went south, like you were already, I guess.
I was already south.
Yeah.
I went real south. Meaning dark, not well psychologically, not well physically, in bed most of the time. I would just once a week try to get myself to church because that's the life I was in. And then every so often I would do something new, and I would come out of it for maybe a few weeks to a month, like some new treatment or whatever. It was always short-lived. And then I'd somehow end up back in bed. And that was many years that I had that cycle of bed, a little better, bed, a little better. I did that for many years and from that point forward, from basically age 32 on to about 40.
And what were you attributing this to? Were you saying, okay, it's all still a South America thing? Did you get different diagnoses?
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of great diagnoses. I went from doctor to doctor. Oh, it's Lyme disease. It's Epstein-Barr. It's thyroid issues. It's this, it's that. And that became my justification and my identity. And it's sort of like I clung to those diagnoses as an excuse for why I couldn't output in the world, and to somehow appease my ego that felt so crappy because I wasn't doing anything. But now I had these reasons, and I clung to them, and I put all of my efforts into trying to figure out the diagnosis. Spent tens of thousands of dollars, multiple appointments a week. I had somebody early on saying, you know what, you might want to look into limbic system retraining. I'm like, no, I've got Lyme disease and that's my problem. And don't tell me it's all in my head. And so my own stubbornness, and actually my own inability, I don't want to say stubbornness, my inability to look at the root of what was happening in me, which was a lot of resentment, inauthenticity, blame, and deep, deep shame and self-hate that I had never, ever dealt with from when I was a child. I couldn't see it. I didn't want to see it, and it wasn't time to see it. And eventually I realized that the efforts of trying to fix myself were getting me nowhere. And I began to look within and realize that there was a different journey I needed to go on in order to actually get out of this.
When you say you started to look within, there's normally is it that you just exhausted everything else, or normally someone comes by something and then they just unpeel a layer and then they're like, okay, this has got something, and they just keep going? Like, what happened with you?
I'd say it was a little bit of both at the same time. Probably the last few years, right before I started brain retraining, I started a little bit of both, doing some of the inner work, energetic work, spiritual work, journaling, that sort of thing, while trying to fix myself at the same time. So I was doing a little bit of both. But eventually I got to the point where I realized that I wasn't able to fix myself. I was seeing the best doctors out there, taking all the supplements in the world, and I was stuck in a dark, quiet room because I couldn't handle light. I couldn't handle sound. And I was like, all right, something is not working. I'm not seeing something. And that's when I realized that I was fighting so hard to survive in a lot of ways. And I needed to let go of that fight. And I knew enough as a physical therapist working with chronic pain that people need to find a way to enjoy their life with the pain. I didn't have chronic pain. I had a lot of these other symptoms because I knew how to work with chronic pain with the brain. I didn't believe you could work with chronic infection with the brain. And in that moment, I was like, what if I use the same principles of working with chronic pain in the brain, and I apply those to this infection and the mold and the toxins, and I start teaching myself that I can live and have joy even with these infections and such, just like I used to teach with chronic pain. And that was my turnaround. And that's what kind of led to the limbic retraining and doing the work that I do, which is learning how to live your values even with, and to let go of the fight of fixing yourself. Because I was just reinforcing that there was something to fix, which was my core issue in the first place as a child. There's something wrong. I need to fix this. And I needed to let go of that loop. Just like with chronic pain, it's the same way. There's a chronic sense of something's wrong with me, and the pain is a way of fixing that. Our psychology comes up with a brilliant solution of I'll create pain to try to fix. And I just mirrored that same idea to infection and all the other issues I had. That what if I decided there was nothing to fix? That was the big switch.
So just with the brain retraining, was that something that you, I guess, organically did? Did you do a program, or was there a specific program you did?
So again, I had a background working with chronic pain. So I had a big background with John Sarno's work, TMS world, all of that. So I understood limbic system issues regarding pain. So I had that. And from there, I started to add in some functional neurology brain work, which is working on the hardware of the brain, also from my physical therapy background. And then I added DNRS into that as well at that point. And I utilized that for a while and eventually developed my own program as I kind of understood the principles of how to put them all together.
So I've read John Sarno's book, and because I get a lot of chronic pain, and I said to you, I think before we started recording, about that I've got a lot of chronic injuries, which I used to treat as separate to like chronic illness, but now I realize they're definitely meshed together, and me not being able to recover from these chronic injuries is, intertwined. Is the same, because I know the problem, when I read Healing Back Pain with John Sarno, I was like, oh, this is amazing. But then I found it very difficult to like implement. And it was kind of just like, yeah, I guess just like what you're saying now, there's actually nothing wrong with you. Don't be scared of the pain. It will go away. That's kind of what I thought from it. And yeah, I haven't really been able to implement those kinds of things. And when I was speaking to another guest that came on the show, he said you can apply those same principles to chronic infection and chronic illness. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly. So the way that I developed my approach that I used was the approach I used for me, which was a lot of ahas of understanding chronic pain and how you resolve that with the Sarno background. Also principles from Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, the biology of belief, and understanding that our identity is running our limbic system, running our brain. And if our identity is such that there's a problem to fix, and that was mine as growing up, there was always a problem to fix. I was very type A, very got to be something more than what I am. I realized that was my core work. And so I really focused all of my efforts on rewiring my identity of there's a problem to fix. Yeah. That was huge for me. There's a lot of ways of doing that. It's not always as simple as there's nothing wrong with me, although that's kind of the end result. Instead, I used I have a go-getter brain. I have a go-getter drive. I needed to give myself a bone to chew on, if you will. And instead of chewing on the bone of fixing my illness, I chewed on the bone of who am I? What do I love? What's my passion? So I redirected that whole energy to something that was about something different than fixing, more about discovery or serving or whatever. That's what I needed to do.
And in that, at that time, just before you kind of started finding out about well, you set on this new path, were you taking a hell of a lot of supplements? Were you doing a lot of therapies, a lot of external things? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably 2 to 3 times a week. I was at some type of practitioner, acupuncture, doctor. I mean, the cupboard full of everything. And that was a part of it, letting go of all of those supplements. And I don't necessarily encourage that you let go of everything. But what I did is I relabeled things. So instead of my different supplements, I would call it joy pills or happy drops, or like, I got my mind to stop thinking about what it was I was doing. And so I kind of kept a core protocol, because, that's what I did for me. And some people just get rid of them fully, but I relabeled what they were and stopped thinking about it. I just stopped thinking, and I did drop a lot of things. I stopped seeing my doctors. I stopped all those big treatments. I mean, there was just a few things that I kind of continued with. But yeah, that was another big switch of, I'm going to find a way to live and be happy, even if this infection never goes away, even if I always have these issues with mold, even if I don't recover from whatever, I'm going to find a way to be happy, because I knew that was possible. And I knew that was really, really going exactly against the programming of I needed to fix this. And at that point, I had nothing left to lose. I'd been at it for so many years that I was like, trying to fix it isn't the path for me, at least. It might be for someone else, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah, wow, this resonates a lot with me, because I've been trying to fix myself for a long time, and still am. But I think I guess it's difficult to just suddenly, like, I'm doing a protocol at the moment, and I decided to like cut back on quite a lot of it, and even now I'm like uneasy about doing that. Because of years of just like, oh, if I spend time not fixing myself, am I gonna make myself worse? And you have those thoughts. How long did it take for you to like start seeing a difference when you were doing this new protocol?
Honestly, it was really quick. When I made the big decision, I said, I'm going to work on the hardware of my brain, getting my brain back online. Meaning I did a lot of functional neurology exercises, vagus nerve exercises, and implemented the limbic system retraining, and really decided that my only infection is fear. And I'm going to work on getting that part of, if I'm going to work on fixing anything, it's getting my consciousness to lift above this old way that I was focusing. I started noticing differences very quickly. However, I would say it took me a good year to turn it all around. It takes a lot of work, but I did know, it was enough where I was like, this is awesome. And in addition, it was like that brain retraining was like my alignment. I loved it. It wasn't work anymore. It was like, who am I? How can I focus my life differently? How can I reclaim these lost aspects of myself? So it wasn't a job. It was something I loved. It was part of what I loved instead of fixing myself.
And did you, after that year, could you class yourself as healthier than ever? Like, were you recovered as far as you could class?
So for me, and the way I describe this, that first year was a lot of limbic system retraining, healing my brain, calming down my body. However, next stage was the inner work, inner attachment repair, relationship stuff. So I got my body functioning really well, but whenever I get triggered in relationship or something that was, something hitting my attachment wounding, I could get, the symptoms, if you will. By then I didn't attribute them to Lyme anymore or mold. It was like, okay, this is my nervous system response. And so then I went on another, like a deeper aspect of the journey that I call Primal Trust, which is that inner attachment repair, along with brain retraining, and somatics along with brain retraining. And so, I continued with that. Now, here's the deal. I'm a very sensitive empath. I can feel stuff. If I'm out of alignment, I will feel symptoms. So when people are like, oh, are you fully recovered? I'm like, I know how to manage my energy field. I know how to manage my nervous system. Do I get hit? Of course. I'm a sensitive person, so I can get stuff flared up. I just had COVID a couple months ago. That can flare up some things, but I know how to bring myself back to center. And so, in a lot of ways, I'm way more resilient than I ever was, but I'm also more sensitive than I was before I went down. And I'm okay with that because I know how to manage it. So, I'm out hiking. I can do I can do pretty much whatever I want, but I am sensitive. I can tell when I walk into a moldy house. I can feel it, but it doesn't take me down. I can just feel it. I just know it. And I know to keep my nervous system in alignment so that it doesn't take me down.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
I feel like I still definitely want to do a second episode with you, but I feel like I can't not ask questions about brain retraining and stuff now. So I think what we're going to have to do is what I would like to do is maybe put questions out to people on Instagram and stuff like that. And we can have maybe a Q&A from them, yeah. But I have to ask you questions because I've got stuff burning in my brain right now. So with stuff so for me, I didn't find out about mold I think I told you the other day, for about 9 years. So I didn't even know mold was a thing. And then I found out, and which has been good because I found out about it, but now I'm aware of it. And so because I'm aware of it, I'm in a place in Bali, which is, it's the nicest background I've ever had in a podcast. It's normally just a white wall. It's a really nice place, but I think I'm allergic to mold or something. I sneeze and I get a lot of those kind of symptoms. So, and I know there is mold in here, but there's going to be mold everywhere in Bali because it's a tropical place. And so it's am I feeding the beast more by not actually, well, or is what you're saying is I could actually live, I don't say in harmony with the mold, but I can live alongside it and feel safe in this environment. It might not be the best thing for my health. However, I can still recover and still do well, even if it's obviously if there was black mold all over the wall, then I probably need to leave. But is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I lived in Portland, or outside of Portland, Oregon, up until a couple months ago, meaning I lived in a moldy house when I was retraining. I just had a moldy house until I moved here. I've been living in mold this whole time. Literally a few months ago, I moved out of mold. So yes. And what's so beautiful is that you're teaching your limbic system that you can coexist alongside things that aren't your favorite, that aren't your favorite energies. And there's something even more healing about that, because maybe your body's sensing, not my favorite environment. And you're like, yeah, and I can still handle it. Just not my favorite person, I can still be with them. So there's this interesting mirroring of the nervous system where you're not having to escape anything that's irritating to you in order to be okay. I can live in a harmonious relationship. We have lived with mold for centuries. I grew up in mold. So this is one of the issues I have. Humans have lived in mold for all time. And now all of a sudden we can't live in mold. No, our nervous systems are so jacked that it's hard to live in mold, but it is possible to live in mold. And it's possible. Many, many people have retrained because they couldn't afford to leave their moldy home. They've retrained in a moldy environment and have recovered. So it's possible. Can they still notice it? Maybe, I don't know. For me, I still noticed it, but it was night and day what it was. And much like you, I didn't even know about mold until the last few years of my process. So, it's best to, not have to control your environment completely and be this is part of my ecosystem. Just like in the world, we have to live with people that we don't love. It's a universal lesson right now. How can we coexist with things that affect us negatively and still be in harmony, even though we're being affected?
See, that's just, for me, it's just so much more of a liberating thought to think, just that I don't need to, because when I first found out about mold, I just bought every book you can think of about mold. And there's one that's basically talking about how people go and live in a caravan in the middle of the desert. And I was like, oh, and now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, that is just making the fight or flight thing even worse, isn't it? Because you're ostracizing yourself from everyone, you're separating yourself further, and you're building even more of a belief that you have to be scared of something. Is that your understanding of it as well?
And you're building a belief that you can't coexist around this thing.
Yeah.
And you're ignoring reality that humans have coexisted with mold for a long time. Is it ideal? Of course not. Can you clean up your environment the best you can? Yes, of course, do that. And you live where you live, and you might not have to live in Bali forever, but you can live there and have a great time, and then, go air out in the desert for a couple of years if you have to, and still have a great time. The point is, mold doesn't need to be the indicator of how happy you are and how much you're enjoying your life.
Yeah.
Don't give it that control.
So all of the laundry list of things that people have, Epstein-Barr, Lyme, all of those things, would you say they're just something that once you have and I guess from your experience, so once you had everything under control, they just make these things dormant and you've just got them going on in your system, but you can just deal with them?
Yes, this is such a good question. This was another big turnaround. I read a study, and I don't have it. Maybe I can give it to you in the notes, where they tested like a whole bunch of lumberjacks in Switzerland or Germany, right?
Yeah.
They've got Lyme,
Yeah.
but they're not symptomatic. So can you coexist with Lyme? Of course you can.
Yeah.
We are made out of a huge microbiome, and our body knows how to handle certain things. We can live with Lyme. We can live with mold. We can live with Epstein-Barr. We can live with these things. And yes, our bodies can handle them and come to be in harmony. And that became my goal. Instead of killing them and eradicating it and having some war inside my body that I could not control. After reading the readings of The Biology of Belief with Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, I realized that maybe I could have a harmonious inner environment and let these supposed bad guys just be part of my ecosystem and allow my body to find its own way of harmony and balance and rebalancing the microbiome with the intelligence that it has, rather than me feeling all the time like I've got monsters inside of me attacking me, because that wasn't helping. And that's actually what made me stop seeing the doctors way back then. I said, you are scaring me more than anything else right now by telling me how these things inside of me are attacking me all the time. And I just said, enough. And that's when I said, my only infection is fear from this point forward. Everything else inside of me is going to learn to come into balance. And I believe that's possible because I've just seen too many examples of people testing positive and having no symptoms. So it's possible. It's somehow possible. And I know that to be true now, because here I am a few years later, and I don't know if I have Lyme disease and all this stuff, probably test my blood, but it doesn't take me down anymore.
Yeah. That's like, it then suddenly it makes you feel so much more normal, and that actually each of those things are just a symptom of, limbic system, dysfunction. So with your program, so I'm doing a program at the moment. I'm finding it slightly overwhelming, and I think the difficulty I have with it is, and because I had the same thing with Joe Dispenza as well, because I love Joe Dispenza. I actually went to his advanced workshop. I saw people having these amazing experiences around me, and it's visualizing and tapping into that feeling that you have in that moment, in that visual. And I find that really difficult, actually feeling that feeling from a moment either in the past or either something you're visualizing in the future. And from what the brain retraining stuff I've looked at has always had like such a big part of that. And again, I know that this is now like my mental, something in my brain, like convincing me I can't do it. And then this is a whole, the vicious cycle. But what would you say to like me in this situation around visualization and that side of things?
I would say that for whatever reason, you've got a couple things going on. You've got a protective mechanism that says it's not safe to visualize what you want to be and what you want to have, because it might get taken away or you might not get it. So it's protection. The second thing though, and this is where what I do is a little different, is I really work on having people find and discover who they really are, what they really value, what adjectives really describe them, because the visualizations need to be specific. And if you're just trying to visualize random happy things, for some people, that's not going to work very well. You need to get very clear on who you are. So for someone like you, I would be saying, get very clear on words that represent what you value, and visualize embodying those words. So for me, one of my words was, and everybody knows that I use this word, imperturbable. I wanted to feel imperturbable. So my visualization is to visualize the feeling of imperturbable. And maybe I would visualize something other than me being imperturbable, but I'd use that word because that mattered to me. So I would recommend finding words that matter to you and visualize experiencing the frequency of those particular words first. And as you start teaching your subconscious that it's okay to just visualize a word because you're not making it a scenario, you're going to start getting that protective mechanisms to calm down. And then it might let you visualize more details and more of the scenario. So it's often a protection mechanism that you kind of need to take the back door on and find things to visualize that it will let you visualize. Like maybe just in the present moment, being outside and seeing an eagle in the sky or a hawk, and visualize being that hawk for a moment. You're looking at it. What are they seeing? What's their perspective? You're being something that you see right now, and just imagine the feeling of a tree where the wind is blowing the tree. Like get pretty abstract and start to take a back door around the protective mechanisms that are keeping you from visualizing and going towards something that that protective mechanism thinks might harm you, basically.
And do you think, because I think another problem I have with it is then when I'm doing it, because I'm not feeling that feeling, I'm like, oh, well, it's not working. And so then I start to beat myself up a little bit, and I'm like, well, this is a waste of time because it's not working. Do you think by the very act of just, because I can visualize stuff, but maybe I don't feel that thing in that moment, is that still doing something, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're still lighting up your right prefrontal cortex, which is part of what you need to come online for brain retraining. If you're not feeling, you're somebody who I would say probably needs a little more of the inner work and inner attachment repair. That's usually what I see. And getting, that's some of the stuff that I work on to get you in touch with core emotional states that may have been being blocked and part of, a suppression, really common with chronic pain, that you have issues with feeling. That's part of that whole dynamic. Yeah. So getting the safety back to feel all the feels is part of the process usually for that type of person.
And how, I know different programs vary in kind of like the amount of time per day you're like committing to it, and I'm sure it varies per person. Do you have is it like something where you have to dedicate a certain part of the more, like when you get up, for example, you do I know the programs where you do rounds and stuff, and then throughout the day you're like interrupting your thoughts? Like how does it work?
So my program, the way I work with things, I work with principles rather than processes. So I tell people, implement the principle of brain retraining, which is something that elevates your mood every day. Now, how long? Maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's an hour, depending on how sick you are, but it's principles. And that doesn't mean that it's always brain retraining. It could be out there walking and appreciating nature, or laughing with your puppy, and just being and purposely being present to feel the feelings of playing with that puppy. That's neuroplasticity, because you are doing something to elevate your mood and shifting your set point, and you're doing it consciously. So I really work with principles, because brain retraining it's just not for everyone. Yes, I have a brain retraining program. I teach it, I recommend it, but I say apply the principles. Neuroplasticity, elevating your mood, interrupting patterns. Interrupting patterns is simply by being present right here and now. Every time you stop and just notice something, like the straw or even my like white mouse, and you're just like noticing it for what it is, that's a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
We think we have to do these dogmatic practices, and they're great and they're a nice structure, and that's a great way to start. And I usually recommend start with one of those practices, but then look at the principles. So for me, I have a whole morning routine of principles that I love. I start off immediately like, what is my conscious set point? What do I want to focus on today? And I also often like work on my energy field and just check in with my body. I always do some type of somatic movement because I want to be in my body. And, you know, I have a couple other practices, but they're ways I want to live, whether I was sick or healthy. Like it's how I want to start my day, because they're principles of what do I want? What do I want to feel like? I want to connect with my body. I want to connect with my energy field. And so I recommend that people look at these programs and look at the principles they're teaching and say, okay, now the way this program is teaching this principle, do I like it? Or do I need to find something else that's a better fit, but still meets this principle here?
That's really interesting. It speaks to me maybe a bit more. I think I've said it on a couple of podcast episodes before. I thought I was kind of a good student in a way, mainly because I just wanted to achieve, but I always got so bored in class, and like the whole thing of like having to do something. I think there's something like in the back of my brain it's like, oh, that's boring, I don't want to do it. Whereas I guess living, it's like you said, I think before we started recording, you asked if I'd done surfing, and you said that surfing, you know, that can be itself can be very, I mean, you're very present when you surf, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And could that be something that if you did,
yeah, I would absolutely be doing surfing for my rewiring process. Like, yeah, just feeling like getting so somatically present. Like, what does it feel like to ebb and flow on this surfboard? What is the feeling of the waves? What is, you know, just what's the feeling there? Watching these other surfers and being them for a moment, even like riding the waves with them in your mind of what that must feel like. Live your life and have that be your rewiring. Use the principles that you're learning. That's how I would approach it. And especially for what I always say, if you have kind of a rebel archetype, anytime someone tells you what to do, it's just automatically going to be sabotaged. So the rebels out there, I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is understand the principles of a program and then make them your own. And that's how I created my whole program. I had to make it my own because I can't do what somebody else says either. I needed to make it my way. So what are the principles here? How can I make it work for me?
God, yeah, it's still a minefield for me, but I guess it's always going to be. I feel like I've done a lot of work, and I've come so, I mean, the fact that I can even have this conversation with you now without me thinking you're crazy means that I've just come so far. Because just like you, I think, you know, even when someone started talking to me about, I started meditating about like 5 years ago, and even just doing that like was such a big step for me. So I think a lot of this is like a gradual process for a lot of people who, like me, weren't in that kind of inner work world before. What's going back to your story a little bit, how is your life? Let's say you never got sick in South America and you continued kind of on that path, the achiever, you know, you got on and achieved everything you were on, you know, going to do on that path. But then, you know, the path you're on now, how is your life different and better as a result of what you've been through?
Yeah, I had no clue who I actually was. I was just living out some programmed expectation of what success should look like. I had no idea what my needs were. I had no sense of an inner attachment. My attachment safety was from the person I was with. I would have been a false facade of a woman. And now instead, I am fiery, disruptive, passionate, crazy, silly, wild. I have all these parts inside of me that I know who they are. Some of them are magical. Some of them are just outrageous. I never would have found them, and I never would have discovered this unique gift that I have of being sensitive that maybe caused a breakdown, but now I have incredible like intuition and discernment working with people. I'm able to impact people in a way that actually matters. And I never would have done that. And most importantly, I never would have known me. And I never would have broken the family lineage of absolute messed up programming that I came from. It's so much better. Like I have self-respect. I didn't ever have that before.
Wow. Yeah. It's your story. I don't know if you heard of Heather McKean before?
No.
Oh, right. She was on my podcast, but you remind, your stories are very similar. She runs a program called Mind Change. But yeah, your stories and the way in which you talk about your life now are just like very, very similar. I don't know.
Oh,
it just came to me then.
I'll check her out. Cool.
Yeah. In terms of like, there's going to be people listening to this right now who are focused fully on external things to get them better. Like what I told you before, they'll have their, as I look, I can see a lot of supplements on my, am I speaking to myself?
Okay. Supplements are okay.
My happy pills.
Yeah.
You know, they've got their supplements, they've got their appointment in an hour, they've got their, you know, all of these different things. And they're like, okay, that worked for you, but it won't work for me. I'm different. What would you say to someone like that?
That's a good question. It won't work for me. I'm different. How is it that trying to find your true self and what you love and what you value and living that right now while you're sick, not be something that would be good for you? Because that's what I'm saying. I'm saying start focusing on something else that is eternal, that is within your control, that can enliven your quality of life, whether or not you ever get out of that bed. And I know what it's like to be debilitated and like hardly able to walk. And I found a way to love my life way back then. I had to, and I did. And I found a way to say, even if this never changes, I can appreciate the life that I have. I can find what I love, even with these uncomfortable symptoms. I can find a way to appreciate being a mother, even though I can't run around the playground. I had to find a way to see how I was living an authentic life, even with the limited capacity that I had. There's nothing that can go wrong there. There's no loss in going on that inner journey. There's just things to gain.
Do you think there's because even when you say, even if I don't get better, even if that, it does trigger me, because I think, I don't know, I guess there's a fine line, because I completely agree with you. You have to, and I've got a lot more joy out of life in the last 3 to 4 years, because I've decided to not put my life on hold. I've gone and done stuff like this. I've started a business, and it's been amazing, and I am enjoying my life a lot more. But I don't know, like, is there a fine line between just, I guess, giving up? Because I think people may see accepting it as giving up, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to have this forever. Just might as well make the best of what I've got, rather than, okay, I've got this, I'm going to be happier than the guy who hasn't got this, because I'm so grateful for what I've got. I just feel like there's a fine line, and I'm scared of like being the wrong side. This is such a good
question. Okay. You're giving up on the insanity of trying to control something that's not controllable fully. You do what you can. But if you don't focus on you and your own sense of what gives you joy, like, that's not giving up. You're going towards you. Most likely you're going to get better by doing that. But I say to that psyche that's like, the ego wants to know, is this going to be in my control? Am I going to get what I want when I do this? And we're trying to let the ego know you're going to get something even better. And what happens with this thing that you're obsessed with fixing, you're going to leave that up to the universe to resolve and the body to resolve. And likely, if you can get your psyche in a place that is a higher consciousness and focusing on what really matters to you, your body will follow along. However, you've got to let go of that white knuckle grip of obsession, of fixing it, in order for your body to get the space to ignite its own intelligence again. You're not giving up. You're going towards something even better.
That was powerful. Yeah, because I think there's also a fine line between, you have this like, well, I say you, I have and have had in the past, have had like, okay, I've got to get up and I have to do this laundry list of things today for my health. So I have to get up, I have to meditate, I have to do my gratitude journal, then I have to take my supplements, I have to do a coffee enema and all of these kind of things. And in a lot of ways, I think I get some enjoyment out of it because I'm like, oh, I'm doing something good for myself. But then in another way, it maybe is separating me from the normal people who don't have to do that, and maybe makes me buy into this whole thing of me being sick and that side of things as well. Do you think there's sorry, I'm kind of just like unloading. You can see this craziness of my brain. Can you see how there's also a fine line there, I guess, like between doing stuff for self-care and doing stuff for, I've got to do it because I need to fix myself?
This is, all of those things you just mentioned are things that I do all the time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I do these things because I love the experience of meditating. The supplements that I take are nutrition for my body because we hardly have nutrition in our soil anymore. It's just like this, drinking good water and eating organic food. It's something I value, nourishing my body. If you do other routines like coffee enemas or dry skin brushing or whatever you're doing, it's like that time is still like beautiful self time that you can be using to visualize what you love and imagine cleaning your body. It's not bad to do these things, but the focus is on, I'm loving my body and I'm getting ready to live today, instead of like, oh, I'm doing this to fix myself. It's just the focus difference. It doesn't mean you don't do these things. It's the mindset of why you're doing them that needs to shift.
The intention you attach to anything you do. Yeah, completely. Because I said to myself when I got to Bali, because we the time zone here is like we're 8 hours ahead of the UK, so even now, God, it'll be another 4 hours until anyone like even sends me a message. So I was just like, right in the morning, that just gives me the chance to just do stuff for me. And it took, I have already felt like a bit of a shift here because I don't have that nagging thing that, oh, I'm taking away from my day. Like actually, like this is soothing. And so I feel like that's, do you feel like the morning and how you set up your day is super important for all of this stuff?
Yes. And in fact, when I started, one of the things that really helped me in my healing process, I had a really wise practitioner at the time where I started doing this inner work. She said, you never learned how to feel your needs and meet your needs. And this is kind of a missing piece. And sometimes our psyche is like, oh, let's get all this big self-care. It's a way of meeting an old need of taking care of yourself. So she had me really use that morning time to sit with myself and make myself this nice cup of tea and write down, what are my needs today? What do I need to do? And maybe part of that is the routines that you've just described, the meditation, sauna, coffee enema, whatever. But it's like you're doing this to say, you're spending sacred time taking care of yourself, much like if you had a child, you'd get up in the morning and change their diaper and feed them and all that kind of stuff, which is really beautiful. And what you're trying to say to yourself is, I don't need to be sick to take the time to do this for myself. This is big. I will continue to do this even when I'm well. This is huge to say that. I'm going to carve this time out for me, whether I'm doing it to help my body or I'm doing it to just sustain my body. For me, one of the things I learned is I started getting, better and started working. If I got really busy and I didn't take out self-care time, I'd start to get symptomatic, and I'd sit down with myself, and I have a way of communicating with my psyche, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'd hear, you're not even taking a lunch hour. You're not even taking care of yourself anymore. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I didn't schedule me time. If I put that in the schedule, you're going to calm down. Yes. Every time, every freaking time I took care of me, the symptoms would calm down. And as my work gets busier, I have to really make those boundaries so that those parts of me don't find ways to like make me take care of myself, if you will.
Yeah. Setting boundaries for someone, definitely with like an achiever mentality is difficult, because you want to take on as much as you possibly can. And I had to, and you were so understanding with me rearranging this initial episode. Like I looked at what I had on in January, and I packed my January full of all of these episodes in the first month that I was in Bali, some of which at like 6 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, this is not in line with like this new life I'm trying to live. And so, it took a lot for me though, because I get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing the podcast grow. It took a lot for me to like cut back on it and set a boundary. And do you see that problem a lot with the people that you teach through your program, like people having difficulty setting those boundaries?
Yeah. Boundary issues are one of the biggest setups to limbic system impairment. I mean, the limbic system starts getting over involved because we don't have our own boundaries inside of us with what I call the adult main personality. That is what you just found out, this adult main personality. And you said, hey, wait a minute, I need to restructure things. You put a boundary there, and that's going to speak volumes to your limbic system, especially as you continue with that kind of habit and you make things matter that aren't just about achievement and that external success, which is part of the old pattern. You're making you matter through this healthy adult self that you're creating. And then the limbic system's like, oh, I can trust him to take care of him now.
Yeah. Something else I've realized actually through doing this most recent program, but I kind of realized it before, is the negative self-talk are necessarily, I'm not things that people would think was a bad idea, but like I'd do stuff like I'd drop a pen on the floor and I'd be like, oh, you idiot. I'd say stuff like that, and I'd be like, or I'd go, oh shit. And so what I didn't realize was that although I know that's not a big deal, what's just happened, because I'm doing that all the time, I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that my limbic system is thinking every time I drop a pen and I say, oh shit, it's like I'm in a car crash or something like that. And I'm having hundreds and hundreds of these things happen a day. And because I'm now in the routine of just saying, oh shit, every time I drop a pen or anything like that, I'm literally making a mountain out of a molehill consistently throughout the day, and my nervous system is on edge. Is that right?
Yeah. One of the things I teach about are these internal identities that are, always saying things or doing things. And part of the work that I teach is becoming very aware of those identities, so that when you hear the oh shit, you have a moment of space where you say, I don't have emotional allegiance to that. You might hear it, but it's literally a conscious moment of like, that's not my thought and feeling. That's not how I actually feel. That's not mine. It's just a habitual program that gets ignited when I do this. And so you start to separate your, what I call adult main personality, from your super ego, from your part-time personalities, from other aspects of your ego, of your inner identity. And then the limbic system's like, oh, okay, so that voice isn't something I need to pay attention to. And you're like, no, that's just a habit that comes through. I don't really feel like, oh shit, right now about that pen. So you're teaching the limbic system of sorts who to listen to and who not to listen to in your head. You still might get the oh shit, but it's not you anymore. It's just a program.
Again, it's the meaning, the intention you attach to that, right?
Yeah, your emotional allegiance to it.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest obstacle you find your people you deal with have to getting better through doing this work?
The ability to be with their emotions
Okay.
The ability to let the limbic system know that the emotions that the limbic system typically is afraid of you feeling your feelings, because at some point a long time ago, those feelings were too much for your personality structure to handle. That's why we end up with emotional suppression or even emotional overreaction, which doesn't make sense. But you're trying to show the limbic system that you can handle the emotions of shame and guilt and people being angry at you, people being disappointed with you, failing, whatever those things are. You're trying to show the limbic system, I can actually hold space for all of that and still feel innately okay. I can handle these feelings now. And I find that, people have a hard time holding space for themselves that way if they've got a limbic system impairment. Either they're emotionally numb or they're like emotionally way overreactive, and they have a hard time with emotional processing and just holding space for all of those inner parts. And I find that a lot of times people will start rewiring, and sometimes they even get like more emotional flooding, because that's a protective mechanism of keeping them from, getting in touch with themselves. Sometimes when people are doing inner work, it can just be too much for them because they don't know how to hold space for themselves. So, the limbic system is your emotional system. So obviously, if there's a limbic system impairment, there's something going on with your emotional processing. And so, that's why the way that I work with things is it's not just brain retraining. I teach people how to hold space for their emotions and process emotions so that their brain retraining can go deeper and farther, because I do see that being a big issue. One of the things that I see a lot is people do brain retraining that's in a way of distracting all the time. And then they have to live in a bubble. They can't get triggered by anybody or anything because they're like, don't trigger me. I need to just, do these rounds all day. They cannot be with their emotions. They know how to distract from them and they learn that skill, but they do not learn how to process their emotions. And that is one of the things that I keep seeing people from being able to recover fully, is they brain retrain all day, but they still can't be with their emotions.
What would you say? What would you say to someone? I'm talking about me, so
I know.
I've got a friend asking.
I figured that out.
What would you say to me? I haven't had as far as childhoods go, like I feel like I was pretty lucky. Like I guess there's nothing's completely perfect, but in general, I feel really lucky about my childhood, my family, my parents, and I don't feel like there are things that happened when and actually I'm doing like a breathwork course at the moment, and it's like conscious connected breathing, and it talks a lot about trauma, and it asked me to like go back and think about things that were potentially like traumatic for me, and so I could pick some things out that could be, but when I compare that, there's just the things I picked out were just things that happen to people, right? What would you say to me, thinking like, is there stuff there that I've suppressed, or is it a case of, and I've said this on a different episode, that I think I have personality traits that actually have maybe got me sick, and and I actually inherited them from my dad, probably, who's just like on all the time and finds it very difficult to relax. Could it be just that it's just more my personality that's got me in the position I'm in rather than trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you had a type A go-getting personality. It doesn't always need to be from trauma. That is it's exhausting to the nervous system. And then I don't know what your parents were like, but if you didn't see like proper like emotional processing or proper emotional like embodiment, you may have also picked up the trait of not being able to feel your feelings very well. And, so I see that as well, like almost like, a lack of modeling of experiencing different emotions might make it hard for you to experience different emotions. So it could just be personality rather than like major traumas for people. But the type A type of personality structure, and even like, oh, I need to be successful for approval, even if it's unconscious, that can be a huge drive in leading to limbic system impairment.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that. We have like I guess my mum, she's not the most emotional of people. She is kind of with us as kids, but just in general, she's actually, I think she's actually very like emotionally well put together, but maybe just isn't like a really like emotional person. And but my dad is he's quite emotional, but very stressed out when we were kids. So I guess those kinds of things do have like a bit of an impact on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially from the mother. Your mother is where you typically learn how to like cry and feel your grief, or like, that kind of thing. So there could just be, not trauma, but a lack of wiring experience. And I've seen that a lot with especially men who have mothers that weren't super emotional. They kind of, that's sort of where they get it from. And, learning how to process. So, this is all just ideas. Like, you can't fully know either way. That you're having a hard time getting into emotions with visualization. So there's some blockage there for some reason. Who knows why? But that's something that it would be to work on. And maybe the breath work can be good for you that way.
Yeah, and I'm going to do an episode of it. I'm going deeper into it. So I just did a month's worth of it's like we had an intense like container, they called it. So twice a week we were doing a lot of the theory behind breath connected breathing, but then journeys. And yeah, for breath work, for me, like you have a lot of emotions come up, and like I did cry a little bit on the last one, which is, I think I went 10 years without crying or something before. Wow. So I was like, I mean, I don't know what I processed, but something came. In fact, no, I do know what I processed. It was about being sick, actually. But yeah, it's really have you done much with have you done anything with breath work?
Yeah, in fact, that's what I was going to mention for people who are listening and they're wanting how to emotional process breath work. It's a great skill to start to get into that. So I think it's great you're doing that.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I think that's a really good, we ended up covering so much, which is amazing. If I think probably what I would look to do is just reach out. I'll ask anyone who's watching this on YouTube to put in the comments, like, do you have any like burning questions, and I'll put it out on Instagram as well, and then we'll do another Q&A if you're all right with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've covered a lot, and I'm sure I said things that can be, little triggering. That's kind of my way. I have a disruptive way about me, but there's just so many ways of healing. There isn't just one. And, anybody listening, like, doesn't mean you have to quit something and, cold turkey, just go to like living your life. That's not what I'm saying. It can be, all woven together, but, at the very least, see this as an opportunity to get in touch with you in a way that you couldn't before, and to examine these coping strategies that maybe you had before you were sick, like being the go-getter or being the codependent or the pleaser. And, it's just your higher self saying, hey, we want more alignment. We want to find a better way to live than what we did before.
Definitely. Thank you so much for coming on. I've personally got so much from this anyway, even just feeling better, just being in this place that I'm in right now, and just like, okay, mold, I can live with you, and that's just super cool. One question actually I do like to ask people, there will be likely a large majority of people watching this right now, they're in their darkest hour and they're watching this because they can't see another way out. They need a bit of inspiration. They need a bit of hope. And they're probably thinking that they're the one person that, isn't able to recover. What's your advice to someone like this? Just to really, really more just to keep going and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I remember that darkest hour. I remember feeling like I was losing, I wasn't ever going to be able to raise my kids. I lived in a dark, quiet room. I literally was in my darkest hour. I couldn't handle light and sound. And, you know, there's just a moment where something is asking you to find beauty and love, even in that darkness. That's where you have to start. And I tell this story a lot that, you know, I kind of crawled outside and went outside to the grass with my kids. And I started looking for 4-leaf clovers because I couldn't hardly stand. And I found a whole bunch of them. And it was like the joy of my day. If I found, you know, I found something to love. I found something to bring the sparkle back into me. And what happens is, as you look for reasons to live, the universe brings more answers to you. You're putting an energy out there of, I want to live. I want to find what's good, and good will come and find you. When you're just looking for what's wrong, you just see what's wrong. There's a universal energetic principle here. So even in that darkness, there is beauty to be found. Even in the pain, there's beautiful things to witness. And you've just got to, there's a choice that says, even in this, I'm going to look for what's good, and I'm going to trust that the universe will bring that next step to me. And that's what happened. It was like a breadcrumb. You know, the 4-leaf clovers led to this, led to that, led to that. And I slowly crawled out because I started to look for what was good in my life, even though I was sick.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was an amazing time to bring the podcast to a close. And if people want to reach out to you to ask you any questions or just connect with you, what's the best way of them to do that?
Probably just through my website, CathleenKing.com, Kathleen with a C. There's a contact me. That's the easiest place. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to getting you back on if you'll have us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it. You've been great to talk to. I love your honest and candid questions. They're great.